All right, our next speaker is a graduate of Stanford University with a master's degree in communication. Now, I think a better way to put it is that she graduated from Stanford University and has become a master communicator. She is a rare combination of talents: highly intelligent, infinitely curious, tenacious, discerning, caring, and she is damn good in front of and behind a camera and a podium. Now, this is a very unique skill. If you think about all the UFO speakers you may have heard over the years, some people are good at it and some aren't. It doesn't matter how fantastic your information is. Linda is both. She is one of the best presenters that you will ever see and a consummate professional. I can assure you that it's not easy to get up here and deliver this information for everybody. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of skill. She is the master, that's why I say it that way. She has devoted her documentary film, television, radio, writing, and reporting career to productions concerning science, medicine, and the environment. She has received local, national, and international awards, including 3 regional Emmys, a National Emmy nomination, and a WCVB Boston Station Peabody Award for medical and scientific programming. She produces, reports, and edits the award-winning Science, Environmental, and Earth Mysteries news website, earthfiles.com. If you have not gone there, then do it before the end of the day, okay? Which has also won numerous awards. She's written 4 books: Mysterious Lights in Crop Circles, An Alien Harvest, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1 and 2. In case you didn't know, that Linda kind of, in a way, started her career in the UFO field and became the leading expert in the world on animal mutilation cases, and that stands to this day. She obviously has followed the lead of curiosity and the strange paths and avenues that investigating these phenomena can take you on, and has broadened her expertise into every field of this study. You cannot turn on a UFO show these days without seeing her wisdom and knowledge being shared on these programs. She cares more about this planet and the people on it than probably anyone that I know, and has devoted her entire life to growing the consciousness of this planet. Today, she will present 2015 groundbreaking news about the UK RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge phenomenon that happened December 1980 in Rendlesham Forest in the UK. New information about a once secret UK restricted study of non-ionizing radiation from unidentified aerial phenomenon. The military doesn't like UFO, so they use UAP. Okay. So UAP radiation has been linked to damaging human tissue and manipulation of the human mind. Joining Linda for a segment of her presentation today will be retired USAF Tech Sergeant John Burroughs. He's the only RAF Bentwaters airman to have interacted with the phenomenon there twice. She will also present new witness testimony about physical evidence that a space-time distortion occurred at the UAP site in Rendlesham Forest. Please welcome Linda Moulton Howe.
It's the one audience in my life that I truly feel that I am sort of among a family of people curious as I am and wanting to know, are we really alone in this vast cosmos, in this vast universe? And Eureka Springs has been a crossroads for me and a lot of people since 1989 in ways that no other conference has been. And the faces that I recognize over the years, it is a wonderful feeling to realize that some people on the planet are at least not intimidated by government policies of denials and lies and want to know what the real truth is. And that leading in this long ago was Lou Farish, to be followed by Dolores Cannon and her daughters, who have made it possible for Eureka Springs and this wonderful family to come together again. And it is my sincere and profound thanks to Julia and to Nancy and to Tom and to all of the Eureka Springs Ozark Conference staff that have made this possible, and we're in this room because of them after so many transitions. And for those of you, yes. And for those of you who have been here since 1989, and I'm curious, is there anyone now that goes back with some of us to 1989? Well, there's a handful. And you know, Tom Adams, Gary Massey were great friends of Lou Farish right at the very beginning. And for those who started going to the Lone Star Bar, it was because of the work of Gary Massey and Tom Adams. And there were many nights where we stayed up all night till the sun came up, and then we came and stood in front of podiums and did presentations. Well, it is a kind of sad note, but passings I try to think of as being an evolution into another dimension, truly. And I wanted to share with you that Tom Adams, that I worked with very closely on animal mutilation cases in the 1980s, and we all, if we didn't see each other any other time in the year, we saw each other here at Eureka. I learned recently that Tom Adams from Paris, Texas, passed on August 20th, 2014. Gary had passed about 3 years before, and Lou in that same time period. And so I hope you will join me right now in a moment in your mind in just wishing them well, that they are still exploring mysteries in whatever dimensions they're in now. And Dolores, wherever you are, God bless you for keeping this going. It was almost exactly to the day, 5 years ago, on April 10th, 2010. I was here with an update about the unidentified aerial lights, beams, and triangular craft mystery that occurred near NATO's largest air base in December of 1980 at RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge. And what I didn't know then was that the UK Defence Intelligence Analysis Staff, known as DI-55, has managed a secret UFO branch for the Ministry of Defense. On December 7th, 2020, DI-55 sent to the MOD its 3-volume, 460-page study entitled, quote, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAPs, in the UK Air Defense Region, close quote. Using UAP instead of UFO was likely a strategy to reduce FOIA requests to the MOD concerning UFOs, an American phrase, because the public and the media weren't given a heads up about UAP as the new search term instead of UFOs, a way to get the public off their back. The DI-55 study was highly classified, UK eyes only, UK secret, and is truly, as John Burroughs' attorney, Pat Frascogna, said earlier this year in his press release, this is a de facto confirmation, meaning the existence of this report talking about unidentified aerial phenomena and non-ionizing radiation from this phenomena that can injure human tissues and manipulate human minds. That is de facto confirmation of unidentified aerial phenomena / UFOs as being very real to the UK and the US governments. It was produced under a UK Ministry of Defense project called Condign. That word means suitable, especially with reference to punishment. For example, the prisoner has suffered condign punishment. So there is dry British wit and irony in the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defense conducting a secret Defense Intelligence Staff investigation of UFOs and calling it Project Condign. The name implies that insiders felt honorable abuse for taking on such a mocked and difficult subject. And meanwhile, the MOD and UK National Archives collaborated in a publicity blitz. A lot of you probably saw some of this on Larry King when he was on. This publicity blitz was to convince the general public that all Ministry of Defense UFO files were being transferred to the UK National Archives, while the MOD's so-called UFO desk was being closed down. But the BBC caught one embarrassing fact on March 3rd, 2011, after the National Archives announced that it was releasing 8,500 pages of UFO-related documents about UFOs from the Ministry of Defense. The BBC found out that, quote, intelligence papers on the Rendlesham incident have gone missing. Those were the words that the UK used, have gone missing. Officials found a huge gap where defense intelligence files should have been. However, Bentwaters and Rendlesham Forest are not missing from the Project Condign UAP study that was first delivered to the MOD in December of 2000, 11 years before the MOD Rendlesham files went missing at the UK National Archives. Annex F in this UAP study is entitled Non-Ionizing EM, that's electromagnetic effects on humans. Non-ionizing means electrons are not stripped from atoms as you find in alpha, beta, and gamma radiations. Instead, the Condign study describes complex combinations of non-ionizing electromagnetic radiations from UFOs that are capable at certain distances and various frequencies of damaging human tissues and manipulating human minds. This is what this whole study is about. Page F4 about UAPs is entitled Potential Mental Effects on Humans. One of its most important paragraphs states, quote, the well-reported Rendlesham Forest Bentwaters event is an example where it might be postulated that several observers were probably exposed to UAP radiation for longer than normal UAP sighting periods, close quote. Those words, longer than normal UAP sighting periods, implies that the UK's DI-55 Defense Intelligence Staff has learned enough about various UFO non-ionizing radiations to at least have a baseline on the time of average human exposures to those radiations. What UAP radiation can do is described in the next paragraph 14. Quote, an important fact is that the reported effect of presumed UAP radiation on humans is that it is quick-acting and remembered, although curiously, following the UAP event, there is little or no recall of events as a continuum. In short, the witness often reports an apparent gaps or lost time, often not accounting for up to several hours. It is described as though the exposure causes a temporary memory erasure, close quote. And for those in this audience, over the decades, you know that is why Bud Hopkins called his book Missing Time, and why in the Human Abduction Syndrome, missing time has been the most common denominator. The next paragraph, 15, states, quote, it is concluded, therefore, that if some UAPs, as is believed and correlated by actual reports, like collateral effects on car electrical equipment, the UAPs produce EM radiation, and then there is a high probability that the UAP radiation can affect the human brain, close quote. The Condign study is not precise about exactly which non-ionizing frequencies emitted from UFOs can manipulate mental imageries that UFO investigators call screen memories in the human abduction syndrome. Nor does it specify which UAP non-ionizing frequencies can injure human hearts and eyes, produce telepathic images such as symbols and binary code, and cause memory erasure. But page F7 of Annex F lists different, here are the diameters of UAPs and the intensity of the radiation that has been measured. And it ranges from 1/2 of a meter, which is about 1.5 or 1 3/4 feet, to 20 meters, which is 66 feet from a UAP. You are in the zone in which you can be affected in your brain and your mind and your physical body, including your heart. The DI-55 study, quote, assumes that UAP is a radiation plasma or charged mass source with effective aperture shown, meaning the diameter of these UAPs with these various intensities at certain distances. However, this should not be confused. Remember, this is the UK DI-55 Defense Analysis Staff to the MOD. However, this should not be confused with the large triangles, rectangles, and other large shapes reported, close quote. So anybody who ever tries to tell you that Project Condign is about balls of plasma or ball lightning, you tell them that in Annex F, there is a table, and it is giving diameters of the UAPs, it is giving intensities of radiation exposure in relation to distance, and says this should not be confused with the large triangles, rectangles, and other shapes that are reported. It's right there. So UAPs are further defined here as something that comes in various large shapes seen in the Earth's atmosphere that are not shaped like terrestrial aircraft. Certain frequencies of non-ionizing radiation, which essentially are radio frequency electromagnetic energies from radio waves to microwaves to infrared to visible light going up in frequency rate. And above that is where you get into where you would have radiation that will damage because it's stripping electrons. Up to visible light, we are in the non-ionizing, but to just be clear, we are talking about non-ionizing radiation in this spectrum in which the frequencies have been identified by the UK government, probably in collaboration with the US, of very certain frequencies that can do damage to human tissue and manipulate minds, including selective memory erasure. Now, when we look at the abduction literature, going back to the 1960s at least, perhaps in 50s in UK, how many people remember these sentences that were confusing where the abductee or the contactee is saying, and I got this impression that I was to stop. I wasn't supposed to get close to the craft while it was still operating. That was always puzzling to people. I think that what we are seeing now and what we're going into today would explain that the non-human intelligence has actually been aware of precisely what is in Project Condign, and there have been warnings to some people at some times by the non-human intelligence. Appendix A5 is entitled Exotic Technologies, and there, exotic solutions are described as, quote, force beyond human understanding and contrary to the laws of physics as we understand them, close quote. Another section is entitled UAPs as propelled vehicles. There, the DI-55 study dismisses a lot of UAP reports as natural phenomena in the ball lightning plasma discharge area, but then discusses the residual percentage of UAP reports that cannot be explained. Quote, one of the extreme postulations is that these residual UAPs are, in fact, genuine constructed air vehicles which use potential scientific and engineering principles which are beyond currently applied knowledge. Thus, they must have some sort of propulsion systems which would provide the extraordinary range of velocities and accelerations, and presumably both endo and exo-atmospheric capabilities, which means to move in and out of the Earth's atmosphere. And that methods of propulsion may in fact be possible that are beyond our current understanding in the UK, close quote. These are words that were written and presented to the MOD from DI-55 in the year 2000, and then quietly, with no notice to anyone, for reasons unknown, this report was unclassified in 2006. We're at the year 2015, at the beginning of 2015. So that means within this past decade, we are talking about a report that was not meant for the general public, complex 460 pages, about what happens when humans are within a certain distance of certain non-ionizing frequencies of unidentified aerial phenomena known as UFOs in the United States, and what it can do to brains and bodies. That's what this is about. The DI-55 report then goes through a list of various exotic propulsions that might be used by observed UAPs, such as antimatter, anti-proton propulsion, electric propulsion technologies, including arc jets, stationary plasma thrust, ion thrusters, field emission propulsion, projected energy, torsion gravity and laser fields that might apply to remote sensing, that's remote viewing, geovision and geoscan, and modeling planets, the sun, and other space objects, apparently based on what is learned in remote sensing and geovision. There is also laser propulsion, microwave propulsion, and in paragraph 31 about propulsion options, DI-55 contemplates whether the UAP propulsion systems could be duplicated with terrestrial technology, and concludes, quote, propulsion mode is the key factor in considering whether it would be possible to construct a vehicle with reported UAP attributes and potentially with an extraterrestrial capability using existing Earth technology. They're raising the question within the MOD, could any of the observed physical properties of unidentified aerial phenomena be duplicated by terrestrial technologies? And they are raising that question in 2000. So the issue about how advanced anything we have under Area 51, S4, or anywhere around the planet is sort of put on a question mark with this report that humans may not have been able to back engineer in as an advanced way as sometimes we think maybe they have. And is it possible to conceive such a craft which can move with zero or near zero sound and change the direction of movement almost instantly, close quote. So the UK's Ministry of Defense has been trying to understand how UAP, UFOs work without sound at extremely high speeds, even jumping point to point and making 90-degree turns. That makes this entire 460-page UAP study a confirmation that UAPs and UFOs are real and physically affect Earth life And that means UAPs, UFOs, are of great defense significance. That is why this 2000 Project Condign study by the MOD's DI-55 is a smoking gun that confirms government knowledge of UAPs, UFOs as very advanced technologies that emit non-ionizing radiation that can injure human bodies and manipulate human minds. UAP radiation was also involved in what happened in Rendlesham Forest, where the thick, tall, dark green trees grew around RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge 35 years ago when UAP, UFO, high strangeness, interacted with Air Force personnel over a 72-hour period from after midnight December 26 to after midnight December 28, 1980. Woodbridge is about 95 miles northeast of London in Suffolk County, not far from the North Sea. In December 1980, 20-year-old U.S. Air Force Airman First Class John Burroughs had been stationed at RAF Bentwaters since July 1979. He would turn out to be the only known serviceman there to be exposed twice and close up to colorful, unidentified aerial phenomena and its non-ionizing radiations. The first time was on December 26, 1980, around 3 a.m., and the second time was 2 nights later, around 4 a.m. on December 28th in Rendlesham Forest near the Woodbridge side of the base. But for the past 35 years, John has never been able to clearly remember what happened, probably because, as we are learning, the UAP radiation manipulated his and others' minds in mysterious ways. It all started after midnight on December 26, 1980, when Airman First Class Burroughs was on law enforcement duty at RAF Woodbridge's East Gate that is marked by the orange circle here in this aerial map. The Bentwaters and Woodbridge Weapons Storage Areas, abbreviated WSA, on both sides, UK and American side, Bentwaters and Woodbridge, they both contained highly classified nuclear weapons, even if never publicly acknowledged by either the UK or the US. With Airman Burroughs was Staff Sergeant Bud Steffens, who was law enforcement supervisor that night. Not far from the East Gate, Sergeant Steffens and Airman Burroughs saw strange blue, orange, red, and white lights hovering at treetop level in Rendlesham Forest. So Burroughs and Steffens drove their patrol car out the East Gate on a road along the trees. The red, orange, and blue lights seemed closer than before, joined by a larger white light that appeared to move along the edge of the forest as if pacing their car and slowly moving closer to them. John Burroughs told me he was overwhelmed with the feeling that something was not right. He and Steffens drove back to the East Gate. They phoned a Sergeant McCabe to report what had been happening, and McCabe alerted Central Security Control. CSC had contacted Heathrow Tower in London, and they were told Heathrow radar did have one or more unidentified aerial objects over the Woodbridge region that traveled rapidly down toward the base. That first high strangeness night of December 26, 1980, Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston was a duty supervisor in security at RAF Woodbridge. So after the radar alert from Heathrow, Sergeant Peniston drove to the East Gate in a truck with newly assigned Airman First Class Edward Cavansack to see for himself what was happening. Airman John Burroughs joined Cavansack and Sergeant Peniston, and the three men drove out of the East Gate onto the logging road that ran through the Rendlesham Forest where Burroughs and Steffens had been earlier. Peniston said the road was full of potholes and was so frozen that it was hard to drive the truck. And that is why they stopped here. Peniston is responsible for these orange lines. He thinks that they stopped here, and then he and John started going through the forest here, that this is where the encounter was. And back here, where that orange line stops, is where Cavansack is waiting in the truck. Peniston said, that he and John Burroughs, going through the forest, running after lights, commenting how can the lights be going through the trees so fast because the trees were so close together, that Penniston says he encountered a triangular craft that left tripod imprints in the forest ground. John Burroughs later wrote in his report, quote, "All three of us hit the ground, and whatever it was, it started moving back toward this open field," close quote. After that, there was a lot of radio interference, and it was decided that Cavansack should stay with the truck to relay communications, while Penniston and Burroughs continued walking deeper into the woods, following the colorful lights moving through the trees. Burroughs and Penniston also described feeling hair on their arms and back of their necks stand up, like they were in the electrostatic atmosphere of a thunderstorm, but it was a clear, cold, starry December night. According to Sergeant Penniston's notebook shown here and his official written report, he and Airman John Burroughs got to within close distance of a highly strange triangular-shaped craft on the ground about 10 feet long and 6.5 feet high. According to Sergeant Penniston, the black triangle emerged out of a blast of white light. Strangely, John Burroughs to this day does not remember seeing Jim Penniston near such a craft. But John also knows his mind has been blocked since that night when he thinks about the red, blue, orange, and white lights. And what neither of those men knew, or Cavansack, was that in Central Security Control, they lost radio contact for 45 to 55 minutes. It was a missing time period, if you want to put it that way, for the whole base, because they did not know what had happened to these three men who left the base to walk into civilian Rendlesham Forest after lights. And as we've seen in Project Condign, close exposure to UAP non-ionizing radiation can injure human tissues and affect minds, including memory erasure in those words I showed you a few minutes ago. Back then, after his two encounters with the mysterious colorful lights, John Burroughs was able to make this sketch of what he remembered about the first strange lights in the handwritten statement that he turned in to RAF Bentwaters Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Hall. Years later, in 2010, John worked with a computer graphics illustrator to produce this computer impression of the red, orange, blue, and white lights. John also knew that there were rumors on the base that he had, quote, jumped up on or had been taken up in a UFO that night. I'm now going to show you brief excerpts from a nearly 30-year-old videotape from November 11th, 1988, during a hypnosis session 8 years after the UAP UFOs were in Rendlesham Forest. John Burroughs speaks very rapidly about being with Staff Sergeant Penniston around 3 a.m. on December 26th as they approached the strange aerial lights in Rendlesham Forest. And in spite of the videotape's deterioration, John's very clear words and rapid are perhaps as close as any of us will ever be to what he experienced so near a phenomenon that is now linked to non-ionizing radiation that can damage human tissues and manipulate human minds. John is reliving his first night's encounter on December 26th as he was next to Staff Sergeant Jim Penniston in Rendlesham Forest.
Light, a weird oval-shaped light. It's hovering, it's strobing.
Flashing back and forth, flashing on and off.
It's white, but there's lights below it. There's little lights below it. There's the orange lights. There's the red lights. It's like sun. It's like the sun, but it's not shaped like the sun. It's like an oval-shaped thing, and it's pulsating.
How far away is it?
10 feet, maybe 15.
How big is it?
I don't know. It keeps changing.
Changing its size.
The lights are pulsating. It's hard to judge. It's there, now it's moving back, it's moving back, it's moving back.
Away from you?
It's moving away, it's up in the air, it's up in the air.
How
It's
high?
moving back, it's up through the trees, it's moving back. Now it's in the distance, but it's there, it's down low again. How did it get through the trees? I don't know. Well, we'll follow it. Call him, tell him, we're going to follow it. We got to follow it. I can't reach him on the radio. The hell with the radio. Put it down. We don't need it. Put it in your pocket. Let's go. We don't care what they say. We've got to find out. Something's there. We got to find out. Let's go. Spread out more. Okay, let's go. Okay, move. Okay, be careful. I feel weird. I feel tingly. We all feel tingly. We all got to know. We got to know. Is it a UFO, John? I don't know. What is the UFO? What is it? I don't know. It's not real. We can hear humming now. The ground's shaking. This is weird. Why didn't we bring our guns? Could it be drawn into us? I feel like I'm being pulled. Something's pulling me. Oh, God. Sergeant Pennison, what's going on? I don't know. It's pulling it towards us. Oh, look, it just changed again. It's small. Now it's moving back. Now it's moving back. Look how fast it moved back. Look, it's a quarter mile back now. Let's start running. We can't let it get away from us. We got to know where it is. Okay, well, it's gone. Okay, security control, return to base. ETA back, I don't know. 30 minutes, hour, unknown. Okay, keep in radio contact. Okay, and we just start walking back. And I'm talking to him.
Going with you.
I'm talking. Sergeant Pennison and I and Bananchek, we're walking. Now we're walking back. Okay, what was it? I don't know. John, what do you think it is? I don't know. Do I look scared? You look pale. I don't know what I saw, John. I think it was a UFO. I don't know. I don't want to believe what I saw. He goes, John, it seemed like we were there and all of a sudden we're here. Why couldn't we get radio contact with them? We should have been able to. There was repeater stations, there were towers, but we lost contact with them. I don't know. Well, what are we going to do? I don't know. Let's just see what happens when we get back. So we're walking, and it's cold, and we're walking, and we come across a creek that we don't even remember crossing. Do you remember this, John? No, I don't remember this. Do you remember that, John? No, I don't remember that. Well, how did we get there? I don't know. Could we have been moved by it? Could something have picked us off the ground? I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. No, the British police are there. The shift commander's there. The flight chief, the security flight chief's there. Our flight chief's there. There's other law enforcement patrols there. Everybody was concerned. They go, we've lost contact with you for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. We didn't know where you were. We saw, the WSA tower saw all kinds of lights in the air. They thought they saw something being beamed up in the air, but they weren't sure. They thought we lost you, John. We thought we lost you guys. Well, what happened? We don't know. So then we meet up with our flight chief and the shift commander and my flight chief. Sergeant Turner goes, John, are you okay? Yeah. We thought we lost you guys. What do you mean? Well, nothing was right, John. We completely lost you. We completely lost contact with you. There were other patrols down at the gate. They said they saw weird happenings. They said they saw something above the tree level. They said they thought they saw something being lifted off the ground. And they said they thought that you were gone. They said that they thought we had lost you. They thought something had taken you. And the shift commander goes, well, gentlemen, I've got some interesting news for you. We lost radio contact with you, as you know. We thought we lost you. The WSA tower saw some weird things. Heathrow Tower had 2 unidentified flying objects. They marked it as UFO. The British base that's 4 miles from here also marked it as UFO. What I feel you were involved in, gentlemen, was a UFO.
Now, is there any life form in or with that craft?
That was a life form.
So John felt that the lights themselves were intelligent life forms. That might mean that the lights were intelligent, self-activating, unmanned drones designed specifically to do work on this planet. Many of you have heard me do that presentation about self-activating software, of self-activating technologies that do not need to be manned, but are capable of planetary missions because they have been programmed in ways that are completely self-activating. That might have been what these lights and what that glassy black drone in the forest were. Airman Burroughs found 3 indentations in the forest soil about 8 feet apart in a triangular pattern. Further, each indentation in the ground was the shape of a triangle itself, pressed about 2 inches into the ground. There were also fresh scorch marks on the trees where branches were broken off. Peniston, Burroughs, and Cavansack returned to the air base. Burroughs and Peniston were told by superiors, quote, "It is best to keep quiet about what you have seen," close quote. So it began right from their return to the base, a policy of non-disclosure. Behind the scenes, the UK Ministry of Defense investigated radioactivity of the triangular depressions in Rendlesham Forest. DI-55 summarized their findings in a memo dated February 23, 1981, only 7 weeks after the December 1980 strange aerial. Here's the date down here, ADI DI-52. The subject is unexplained lights, and the reference are these numbers. And it says 1, quote, "Like DI-55, DI-52, another agency, brother agency, or section inside of DI-55, do not know of any serious explanation for the phenomena described at reference unexplained lights, DI-55, 108, 15, 1. 2, background radioactivity varies considerably due to a number of factors. The value of 0.1 milliroentgens, I assume that this is per hour, seems significantly higher than the average background of about 0.015 milliroentgens. I would expect the variation in this to be much more than a factor of 2, although it might be greater for specific reasons. 3, if you wish to pursue this further, I could make inquiries as to natural background levels in the area. The way the United States report is written, however, suggests that 0.1 milliroentgens was greater than they expected, close quote, signed ADI DI-52 on February 23rd, 1981, about the events 7 weeks earlier between December 26th and 28th, 1980. This letter alone says the United States government and the UK government were communicating and studying and talking about with each other how much radiation was at the 1, 2, 3, who knows how many sites, but at least the one on December 26th, where John Burroughs and Jim Peniston encountered a craft, lights, beam. Both governments in February of 1981 were communicating with each other. The next night of December 27th, 1980, after midnight, another eyewitness to the triangular depressions in the ground and scorched grass and trees said that she was there with RAF Bentwaters Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt and the local Woodbridge Elementary School liaison officers with RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge. Now, this is the first time at this moment that I have ever reported this. The date of my interview was December 29th, 2010, in Woodbridge, on the last day that John Burroughs, Jim Peniston, and I were with the Ancient Aliens TV production crew in Woodbridge, and we were working on segments for the History Channel series about the 30th anniversary return of these men to Rendlesham Forest. And one of the people in the production brought to us this well-groomed an articulate 85-year-old woman born on July 9th, 1925. She had heard about the Ancient Aliens TV production that we were doing about this 30th anniversary return, and she decided to have a friend drive her to where we were staying to talk with anyone who would listen about what she knew firsthand of the strange December 1980 events in Rendlesham Forest. It was the last busy afternoon before returning to the United States, and we did not videotape her. Instead, I met with her privately. None of us knew what she was going to say. She agreed to let me use my little tape recorder to tape her as long as I never revealed her name. The next morning, we flew home, and eventually audio on my little recorder was transferred to my main computer. At about the same time, there was a hard drive failure in which I thought the audio and the files were lost. And the little recorder could not be found either. It was one of the strangest gaps, as if something had just lifted them out of my life and my office. And then only 3 months ago, in January 2015, the small recorder was found, along with a backup external hard drive that none of us knew in 2010 to 11 had saved the original transfer. And suddenly, coming back into my life in January of 2015, along with these other revelations in John's life, comes this extraordinary interview with a woman in which I'm going to share with you first a part here, and then a while later, I will share with you a second extraordinary part. This firsthand description by this woman, who was born in the United States, she was born in New Mexico, worked for several different military elementary schools. She had traveled around the world, including many years in a Woodbridge elementary school where children of RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge officers were enrolled. That is why she knew Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt and other base personnel. Her story begins after she had gone to bed at what she thinks was after midnight on Saturday, December 27th, 1980. John, Jim, and Ed Kavansak are in the forest between midnight and 4 to 5 a.m. the 26th. So now we're past midnight on Saturday, December 27th. The phone rang, and it was the school's liaison officer with the air base. She had a late night request from RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt to meet out in Rendlesham Forest, not far from the East Gate. The liaison officer said she did not want to go alone to the forest and insisted that her school colleague, who was in bed, get up, get dressed, and join her at the Rendlesham location that Colonel Halt had requested.
Colonel Halt had left the party, and Sherry called me. I was in bed. She said, "I want you to come with me to see Colonel Halt." And I said, "Well, why do you want me to go with you?" She said, "I just don't want to go by myself." And she was the school's officer, liaison between the school and the military. Halt was the deputy base commander, and she went to a lot of functions with him. I got dressed quickly, and we drove out to the Rendlesham woods, and that's what we saw.
And you're pointing to the photograph
Yep.
by Goulius with a British policeman.
Yeah, but nobody was there. It was just us. And we walked over to the ground. There were those funny shapes, like a splayed foot.
A triangular pattern in the ground.
Yeah, triangle. There were three.
It was a triangular depression in the forest floor.
Right.
What is Colonel Halt saying to you about what it is?
He didn't say anything about what. I just know I was looking because all of this looked as if it were scorched.
Could you smell?
Yes, there was a smell, and the three of us commented that it was a smell that we did not know, we did not recognize, and we had never smelled it before.
Did you look at the trees?
Yes, the trees were scorched.
Did Holt say anything?
No, he didn't mention it. This was scorched, and this was awfully green.
So the front of the photo was green, but this area between the depressions was scorched.
Yes,
And that might explain why there does seem to be a discoloration here.
there was a discoloration.
And these trees, you would call the trees scorched because why?
Well, because they looked the same as what was here.
A beige. As you looked at this beigey scorch on the trees and on the ground,
Oh, but it was also like crumbly.
so this might have been green and scorched to beige.
Yes.
How long do you think it took you to leave that spot to get to the East Gate?
Oh, not long.
You were close,
Yes,
close to the East Gate.
yes.
You get home approximately what time?
Well, I think it was 4. I was shocked and I was shaken.
So here is somebody who was there physically, a surprise to all of us to learn that Colonel Halt would have gone to get 2 people who worked in the elementary school to go out to the site for reasons that he never explained to them. But she is, without anybody prompting or giving her any upfront, she is describing the scene of the scorched trees and the scorched ground. And we know from Monroe Nevels, who went to this same site with a Geiger counter, that he went around to 3 holes in a triangular pattern in which the grass appeared to be burnt or scorched, and the trees appeared to be burned or scorched, and he took his Geiger counter around to the trees and in the ground where those holes were, and he reported above background in certain frequencies of radiation. And you will hear another very amazing thing from her in a few minutes. The woman said that she never understood what Halt wanted from her and her school colleague, but Colonel Halt was back in Rendlesham Forest the night of December 28th after midnight. John Burroughs was there too because he felt mysteriously drawn back to the lights again. And this time, Bentwaters Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Halt, was in the forest with a tape recorder, light-alls, Geiger counter, and other equipment to document the unusual aerial lights and beams that had persisted for 3 nights in a row by then. And Colonel Halt told me directly that one of the beams from an object in the air came down to the ground only a few feet from his own shoes, and he was confused about whether this was an act of aggression or not. But Colonel Halt gave John Burroughs and Sergeant Adrian Bustinza permission to go closer toward the lights. Sergeant Bustinza told John and me that he saw a red-orange aerial light surround John. And then suddenly, Sergeant Bustinza was on the ground, and John Burroughs does not remember what happened, except that later Bustinza told John, quote, "The light forced me to the ground, and I saw the red-orange light come over you," close quote. Not long after John Burroughs had twice been close to the unidentified aerial phenomena in Rendlesham Forest, he became ill and was diagnosed with a heart murmur, which he did not have when he joined the Air Force at age 18 in 1978. When we were in England working on the Ancient Aliens production, none of us knew about the Project Condign DI-55 report that links non-ionizing radiation from unidentified aerial phenomena to injury of human tissues and manipulation of human brains and minds. We all returned to the United States on New Year's 2011, and a month later in February, John Burroughs once again became very ill. He was diagnosed with congestive heart failure and atrial fibrillation. His lungs were filling up with water because his heart was not pumping right and he would get out of rhythm. In his struggle to stay alive, to get the Veterans Administration to provide medical benefits, which were being denied because they said that they couldn't find any medical records for him for 79 to 82 beginning, And for him to endure life-saving open heart surgery and to keep filing FOIAs with the UK Ministry of Defense about the link between his heart damage and what happened in Rendlesham Forest in December 1980, John Burroughs has recently made stunning breakthroughs with the Veterans Administration and the UK Ministry of Defense. And recently, John Burroughs received the 2015 Researcher of the Year Award at the February 21st Open Minds Conference in Fountain Hills, Arizona. The award, yes. The award was for his persistent FOIA correspondence with the UK Ministry of Defense. And joining me now to discuss these breakthroughs and their implications is my colleague and retired U.S. Air Force Tech Sergeant, John Burroughs.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give you a brief recap, and it started almost 35 years ago now. 5 years ago, Linda and I were here we were trying to get on the circuit to start giving people new information on actually not new information, but to educate them on the case, because it's well known in England, but it wasn't so well known here. The last 5 years have been quite the ride, but before I go into a little bit of that, I want to take some time to thank a few people that have helped me the last 5 years. I'm going to start with Linda. Thank you for bringing me here today. Also, after you're done and you head home, or even today, go on Earth Files, because on Earth Files, she started this way back in the 90s, and there's updates all along the way leading up to currently today on all the stuff that's taken place, to include our 30-year anniversary return, all the stuff that went on over there. So if you ever want to go somewhere to get the most updated information on the case, Earth Files is the place to go, and Linda's been on the case since the 90s. So again, I want to thank her for that. Okay, the second two individuals I'd like to take the time to thank today are sitting in the audience. That would be Pat Frascogna and his lovely wife, Lisa. I'd like them to stand up, please. Okay. A lot of you aren't probably aware of it, but about 4 years ago, I got to meet Pat through a conference he was holding in Mississippi, and he decided to get involved in this and to help Jim and I out. And he started out with FOIA, and started going through the FOIA stuff with the government. And a couple of things that came out from that was the fact that the CIA will need to confirm or not if they're holding classified material on the incident. State Department was involved, which makes it an international incident. And along those lines, they said they would release the documents to us if the Air Force would agree to it. The Air Force denied those documents existed. So that was some of the incident stuff that we've had that involved the United States government. But shortly after I returned from the UK and I met Pat, I became ill, and my illness got worse and worse. And along the way, he stepped in. He did a lot of work behind the scenes that most people aren't aware of, which ended up leading to the fact that not only this year in January, but prior to that, I got a life-saving surgery, and I did get granted full disability by the government. So at this time, he also flew in right prior to my surgery. It was with me during my surgery and afterwards in my initial recovery on his own dime to be there for me. So once again, I'd like you to give him and his wife a big hand for this. Before I go any further, I believe most of you probably know, if not, we wrote a book also, and the book was written by myself, Jim Peniston, Nick Pope, and Pat Frascogna also wrote a chapter in it. I'm going to go on record and say this today. I've said it before, but I'm going to tell you today. Based on the book itself, it's an important read, but there are two chapters in there that are vital, that make this a definitive book on the incident, but also possibly, as Nick Pope had said way earlier, that the Rendlesham Forest case itself may be a stepping stone towards the actual phenomenon itself being identified and what we're dealing with. But within it, chapter 14 and 17 are very important now because of what the government is admitted to, because one of them deals with Condyne itself and the other one deals with Pat in his chapter involving the whole legal aspect that went on. So those are both important, that are going to be more and more important as we go down the line, I think along the lines of what's about to happen or will happen shortly with what the government's going to probably go forward with in this. But getting along the lines, in the last 5 years, a few things happened. I became ill. Initially, when I first started this, it was more along the lines to get us all together, do a 30-year anniversary, and put some closure to it. Maybe get us together, talk about it, and make some sense out of it. Well, when that started, a lot of things started going crazy. I think most of you are probably aware the binary came up. Okay, ancient aliens got involved. I became sick, and all the issues started with that. One of the things that went on when I got sick was simply my civilian doctor couldn't put two and two together. He couldn't understand why I was having the issues that I was having, especially the overall health I had other than the problems with the heart. So he requested to go back and find out when I initially started with the problems. Well, lo and behold, the problems all started right after our encounter in Rendlesham Forest. Okay? And one of the things that I want to quickly discuss is you couldn't get in the Air Force with a heart problem. It was a disqualifier. Okay? The two things I got lucky to have and re-get were my entry-level physical, showed no heart issues, my exit physical in 1988, which was from active going into the reserves with major heart issues. So I couldn't even have gotten in the Air Force with these heart issues. My heart issues started right after the incident. My doctor wanted to take a quick look at what the testing they did, and where they took me for the testing after they identified the issue was to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Okay? At the time, it didn't make a lot of sense, but nowadays it's an important factor involved. But anyway, so started doing some requests. Senator got involved, Senator Kyle. Okay, he had an aide that was very experienced in this type of stuff and really started working hard on it. She went along the lines of the initial response back from the government was, yes, I was in the military, but they had no files on my medical or my personnel records. They weren't where they belonged. So she sent back a letter saying that. They were eventually able to at least get some of my personnel files, but along with that came a letter from her saying that what's going on here is your medical records are classified. So that was the first time classified came up, okay? The next step along the ways was she said you needed to go and file a disability claim. And this was before I got really sick, because if you do file a disability claim, we have more ability to try to get into where your files are and where they're located. Okay, now all this was going on. Along the way also was the citizens hearing, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. What came out of the citizens hearing was two things. Number one, every member on that panel, through Pat, who drafted a letter for them, signed a letter and sent it to the President of the United States. Okay, and the second part was they also sent a letter to the head of the VA at the time asking why my records were classified to release these records and get Jim and I the treatment we deserved. We never got an official acknowledgement back from the White House, but believe it or not, the actual letter to the president ended up back up in my case file with the VA. So somewhere along the line, I'm not saying the man himself was briefed on this, but people within the White House became aware of the case. From that point, Senator Kyle hit a wall, and he was retiring, so he could not get involved any further because he was retiring. He recommended Senator McCain's office to get involved. That's the next person I'd like to thank who's not here today, because Senator McCain took a big risk here. And what I'm telling you is this. He took a risk because he was giving the documents from Senator Kyle's office and some other documents I had, and it clearly showed that we were involved in an incident that had UFO implications. Now, a lot of people wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. He took it on, and his staff took it on, and they started working hard at this. They got me in to see some of the people moving forward with my disability. What happened there was simply the doctor looked at me, and this is when I first found this out, which came up even later, was that I wasn't in the Air Force in '79, so therefore what I said happened couldn't have happened. And I looked at her, and there was no medical records from '79 to '82. So my next question to her was, after I pulled out the file showing it was in the Air Force in '79, and her eyes got real big, was, how can you give me an honest rating if you don't have those records available to you? And she just looked at me and says, that's above my pay grade. That'll have to be decided later on. Okay. But it stopped there. I briefed Senator McCain's staff on it, and they were kind of shocked, but they were still hesitant in this. Well, about 3 months later, I got a letter from the VA denying that the reason why they denied my request for disability was 2 reasons. One, I wasn't in the Air Force in 79 to 82. They altered my DD Form 214. They did. The DD Form 214 they produced was showing I didn't come in until 1982. So they broke a law there, okay? Then they also said they had no medical records on me, period. Okay. Well, that really got the attention of Senator McCain's staff. First thing they were able to do was eventually, through a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, was get my DD Form 214 corrected. And that took a lot of effort. But what was funny was the senior staff that was involved out of Phoenix now and in DC said that they did a yeoman's job to get my records, or my DD Form 214 changed, but I'd probably never get my medical records. Just don't expect to do that. Okay, right after that, and right after the citizens' hearing, this is the last person I'm going to thank today, and there's going to be some more stuff brought up about him with Linda here in a couple minutes. But basically, a forensic doctor showed up in the scenes, contacted Pat, gave him some information, ended up meeting with me in Sedona, and Pat and his wife were brought out too, did an exam on me, and felt my situation was going critical. He wrote a letter to the Department of Defense and the VA, which got me my treatment expedited, and I got the life-saving service. So I'd like to thank him too, even though he's not here, because without him I wouldn't be alive today. So that's another individual, and she'll explain that further. Okay. Now, you had 2 senators that felt my files were classified, which is through special operations. A third one also looked in it briefly, Senator Sanders, who was the head of the VA Oversight Committee. He said the same thing. Now we've got some things really rolling behind the scenes. And for time frames, I can't go into it. But what I want to say, it all ended up this way. Senator McCain's staff made it clear to the VA, and some other people did, including Pat, that this wasn't going to go away, and that either they took care of me or that there was going to be an inquiry opened up on what really happened in Rendlesham Forest. Shortly after that, they settled. In January of this year, they sent all the paperwork out, and the announcement was made in Phoenix. But the interesting thing is, folks, they acknowledged that I was injured in the line of duty. That was my whole case. But my medical records are still classified today. Thank you.
Our government at work. John and I, after we do this last final segment, we will both be downstairs in the vendor room where Sherry Wild has been kind enough to let us share her book table. We both have a few books. I have an Alien Harvest, and John has his important RAF Bentwaters book. So we will have a few to sign, and the part that I would encourage all of you who would like to talk with us, Q&A, that we will be there for you to, if you want to talk for an hour too, so come down. Now, I interviewed both John and his attorney, Pat Frascogna, in February for a 2-part Earth Files report and several radio broadcasts on Coast to Coast AM, Dreamland, Dark Matter, Red Pill, John B. Wells, Jimmy Church, and other programs about the VA and the MOD breakthroughs. And by March 8th, I also did an Earth Files news segment on YouTube. In all broadcasts, I stressed that to this day, John Burroughs' 1979 to 1982 medical records from his U.S. Air Force assignment at RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge, are still withheld as classified, and there was a lot of buzz about this news on the internet. By the evening of March 13th, 2015, this reply header showed up in the above top secret thread under a discussion topic listed as, quote, US DOD, Department of Defense, have confirmed not our Department of Defense, the UK MOD Department of Defense, have confirmed the UFO phenomena is real, close quote. The thread discussion centered around the question, why would John Burroughs' medical records from RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge be classified, and was that legal? The name on the thread header is Kit Green. More formally, Kit Green is Christopher Kit Green, MD. Back in 1982, Dr. Green was on a list called the Aviary. This was a list of bird names unofficially put together by UFO investigators William Moore and Jamie Chandray, who was a TV producer at the time. And this was a list of code names for a few anonymous whistleblowers and UFO researchers. Some on the list were professional investigators, such as astronomer and author Jacques Vallée. Others were from counterintelligence trying to maintain the World War II policy of denial about extraterrestrial technologies and biological entities interacting with Earth, past and present. Dr. Kit Green was listed as Blue Jay on that 1982 aviary list. He admits he worked for the Central Intelligence Agency on remote viewing research and later became chief of biomedical sciences at General Motors. More recently, Dr. Green has worked as Assistant Dean Asia Pacific in the Wayne State School of Medicine and as Professor of Diagnostic Radiology and Psychiatry in the Detroit Medical Center. Here is Dr. Green's entire and extraordinary March 13th, 2015 statement approximately 1 month ago. This is a reply to the entire thread, and I will only address two issues that are common throughout many comments on the thread. They are question number one. How can it be true that medical records such as John Burroughs could have been classified? Is this true? Is it sensible? What are the reasons? And question two, what caused his injuries and several others present over the encounter with the odd air form that emitted the broadband non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation, NIEMR is the acronym for that. It is true, his records, about 1,000 pages, and to this day, still many hundreds, were in fact legally classified. In my 46-year career as a medical officer and physician with CIA, including a staff officer, chief of medical intelligence, life sciences division, and assistant national intelligence officer for science and technology, I had, until a year or so ago, only seen a handful of truly classified medical records, those of Adolf Hitler, John Kennedy's autopsy, and recently, John Burroughs. I don't know whether to say you're in distinguished or not distinguished company. Thank God. The reasons for classifying were different. When I was denied these records after many requests, even though I have continuously held top secret, sensitive, compartmented information clearances for almost 50 years, I was able to quickly determine that the reasons were quite simple. Medical records are not usually digital and are easily sequestered in multiple locations and almost impossible to find. These were and remain, except for recent years, in hard copy, scanned, and separated from FOIA access and even mine. This is Kit Green talking about looking for John Burroughs records. The reasons are, I was told by current DOD and VA record staffs, that, quote, inside the doctor's notes, the nursing notes, the specialist note, are a myriad of references to special access projects and the names of other adjacent and ancillary programs and projects that cannot be disentangled and which could uncover active and recent projects unrelated to Rendlesham, but I bet they all involve UAP UFOs, The reasons are not necessarily related to Rendlesham, and not all the connections relate to Rendlesham, close quote. This makes some sense operationally, but no sense ethically. John was hurt. He needed care then, often, and now. He had injuries we now understand are related to narrow radio frequency bandwidths that only in some cases in the past 5 years have become linked to the specific etiology of cardiac and other injury he suffered. There are likely other persons and other injuries. Question number 1. Yes, his records were classified. Some remain classified. The reasons are not entirely ethical. Thank God that a couple of senators, Kyle and McCain, had the guts to push and push to disentangle that which was legitimately classified from those records that were needed to make the right decision about injuries sustained while on active duty, period. It was true. It is sensible. It is not entirely the stuff to make us physicians very proud. Question number 2. Broadband non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation caused the injuries. The radio frequency is identified in a dozen classified and a half dozen unclassified studies on cardiological and neurological injuries, not thousands of reports. Very, very few physicians even care about this arcane area of research, and fewer know about the injuries sustained by near field at 100 meters, that would be 328 feet, to humans, meaning between 0 to 328 feet in that distance, depending upon the frequency of the non-ionizing radiation, you could be damaged, or your mind could be manipulated. The data is sparse, it is not properly peer-reviewed, it is not understood, it is not the subject of current research, and that is the truth. The decision that was made to grant medical disability to John was just. Some of his records will remain classified. Those of us in military and intelligence medicine can be proud the right decision was finally, if belatedly, made. We should remain both vigilant and ashamed that our profession remains improperly darkened, and we should bring it to the light when we can. His disclosure statements. 1, I did not clear this short statement with John Burroughs, his attorney, anyone in my government, including my contracting officers, technical representatives. 2, I am a chief medical advisor to ATS above top secret. 3, I own a fraction of a percent of stock in the Above Network LLC that owns and manages the Above Top Secret website. I receive no compensation. Signed, Christopher C. Green, MD, PhD, all caps, FAAFS, which in medicine, FAAFS stands for Fellow of the American Academy of Foot Surgeons. The intensities of unknown frequencies, fields, and radiations that people in Rendlesham Forest were exposed to between December 26th and 28, 1980, became even a more dramatic question when talking with the woman retired from the Woodbridge Elementary School. Here is a second excerpt from our December 29th, 2010 interview in Woodbridge.
So it was on Monday, and when I got to the school, the workmen were there, and they were saying that the house that had been there wasn't there anymore. And I said, what do you mean the house isn't there anymore? And they said the house was gone. That's how we knew that there was a house. These Suffolk folk know the house was there.
How far was the house from that site?
Well, if you go out the back gate, it would have been just across from it, from the east gate. Because we all went by it when we were on our way to Bentwaters. We never went the long way. We took that shortcut in the back. Then I went by it. I thought, oh, I'll just give a look. And so I did, and it wasn't there. Then I get a call that someone from Bentwaters is coming over from the legal office. And I said, what is this about? Well, the man who brings you the letter that we're asking you to sign will be there shortly. So how long it took him to drive over from Bentwaters to Woodbridge, I don't know, but he was there before lunch, I'll tell you that.
On Monday?
On Monday, before lunch. This is after I had already been told by my workman that the house was gone. So I wasn't surprised when there was that notice. He came in and he said, I want you to sign this and I'll take it back to headquarters. And I said, I would like to read it. And he said, oh, you may read it and then sign it. And he stayed in my office the whole time while I was reading it. And I looked up and I said, what about this? And he said, what? And I said, the house. And I said, I can't sign that because that's a lie. He said, we need for you to sign it. Well, who to call? Who do you say? I mean, so I signed it.
What did the sentence say?
It said that this house never existed. I knew what they were getting at because of what the men had said to me. If they hadn't put that sentence in there, or if I hadn't talked to the workmen, or they hadn't talked to me, they were the ones who came to me. They wanted to know what happened to that house.
The implication is that RAF Bentwaters Legal wanted you to say that you had signed acknowledging that they had an issue about a house disappearing.
Yeah, yeah. But I knew it was a lie when I signed it. But the guy also said to me, this is for security's sake. So I signed it. Sherry told me she had to sign the same statement. Now, I didn't ask Colonel Holt if he had to sign the statement, but I think the reason being that it was the two of us is because we were civilians.
Maybe in 1980 it was so incomprehensible to say there was a house and people and everything was here, and then it wasn't here.
Well, some of them, as I understand it from my workmen, though, they went to the police and they wanted to know what happened to the house.
Yeah. Now, the woman said that the house disappeared, was right across from the east gate, and on this, I've done this road, her house would have been up here. She would have come down this road. She would have done this right turn on this road going through the east gate. Here is a known Foley house. John and I and others have, with some help of a man in Woodbridge, we have been trying to find accurate 1979 to 80, what would be either ordnance maps or aerials. And it is, as our friend in Woodbridge said, it is as if the local records office has been scrubbed completely of those ordnance maps and those aerials for that period of time. This is a current, today, Google map. And what I find interesting, which is not proof, but I believe that this woman, because of other things that we have heard that other people have talked, and hopefully we'll be able to find more, is that at least here, when you see patches like that in otherwise clear ground, usually you find stuff like that growing around where there were buildings or houses. And over here is an unidentified, unexplained, what looks like the basics of a foundation. What we need are accurate 1979, 1980, unaltered maps. And somebody doesn't want those out, I guess. So I leave this to you. on a note that may be what is going through your minds right now, because it certainly did when I talked with this woman and then was editing these words, thinking about the implications. The idea that a house would disappear after strange lights, beams, and a UFO were in a nearby forest, that it made me think of the Philadelphia experiment that allegedly took place October 28, 1943. When I worked in Denver's KMGH TV Channel 7 as director of special projects, I interviewed a resident whose next-door neighbor said he was a teenager in the early 1950s. His mother worked in the Pentagon and got him a summer job winding those microfilm machines that they used then, and they would get teenagers, and as he said, I was furniture in the room. They didn't treat me like I was a real human being. And the people who would come into the room were usually upper authorities, like generals and other military personnel. The teenage boy said a general came in with a woman also in uniform and asked for a specific microfilm. The teenager wound the machine down to the frame number, and he was looking at a diagram profile of a naval ship. He heard the woman say to the general, quote, and you know that one of the men on that ship ended up embedded in a wall in Italy, close quote. The Denver man that I talked with said his neighbors insisted from his early 1950s teenage summer work in the Pentagon that he knew it was a real event and that sailors and their body parts were displaced by the forces aimed at the naval ship in the microfilm about the experiment to make the Navy ship invisible to radar. This slide has been made by people who have talked to people who have said that they had information that this occurred. My firsthand is the discussion with the man about somebody being embedded in a wall, a building in Italy. And in your mind, if you start thinking of a sphere and electromagnetic fields and where Norfolk and the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard would be in comparison to Italy on a planet that we are not understanding in terms of magnetic fields and the relationship of forces that can focus and manipulate magnetic fields, let alone time travel, in which the physics today is beginning to suggest time travel could very much be a reality, both backwards and forwards, and that time itself, the manipulation of space and matter, in moving point to point, bending space-time, could end up displacing matter. John and Jim each told me that on December 26, 1980, when they were trying to follow the lights through the trees, that time seemed to slow down. Both felt like they were moving in slow motion, and remember their skin tingled and hair on their heads and neck rose like they were in a strong electrostatic field. It was Jim Peniston who remembered the intense flare of white light, seeing a small black glassy triangular craft on the forest floor right after the blinding white light. Sergeant Peniston did not know where John was, but he walked around the craft, dragging his fingers over its smooth, glassy surface that felt warmer than the cold, humid winter air. And when he got to the front right side of the triangle here, there were symbols raised like Braille, he said. And as his fingers traced along the tops of the symbols, his mind was filled with zeros and ones, binary code, and telepathic thoughts about the source of the black triangle, that it was from human time travelers 40,000 years in the future. Their mission was to harvest genetic material from an Earth timeline that could be used as Band-Aids to keep civilization alive in the far future that faces survival problems. Physicist and astrobiologist Paul Davies at Arizona State University is author of How to Build a Time Machine and the Eerie Silence, Renewing Our Search for Alien Intelligence. And on page 121, he writes, quote, our best understanding of the nature of time comes from Einstein's general theory of relativity, which does seem to permit journeys both forward and backward in time. All you need to do to reach the future sooner is to move as fast as possible. For example, at 99% of the speed of light, if you set off now, you could reach Earth year 2100 in less than 13 years. But getting back from the future is a much tougher challenge. Although not strictly forbidden by the general theory of relativity, journeying backwards in time involves exotic super technology, such as hypothetical wormholes in space that have an exit and an entrance, close quote. But so far, even CERN's Large Hadron Collider has not turned up a wormhole. In a previous Eureka Springs conference, I reported about the concept of extraterrestrial self-activated technology that uses self-activating software. What if the unidentified aerial phenomena in Rendlesham Forest 35 years ago was an unmanned time-traveling drone on an emergency survival mission for its civilization? What if time travel involves moving in and out of wormholes like point-to-point energy bursts that we see as blinding flashes of white light and might cause matter to disappear in our space-time reality? There is a paradox also in Peniston's recall of the telepathic transmission from that glowing craft. The implication is that the time travelers are human descendants from a place 40,000 years in the future where humanity is dying out. Time machine craft are sent back through time to harvest genetic material from our present Earth life in order to help a future civilization survive. The explanation given for traveling thousands of years into the past was to avoid affecting the time traveler's own future timeline in some dangerous, uncontrollable way, but moving backwards in time to a distant past to survive is changing their future. Perhaps the paradox is a translation problem in which we humans lack the language and understanding of a different cosmology than we have discovered so far. Fans of Star Trek and Star Wars and other science fiction are accustomed to plots that include allies or enemies that use time travel for transportation, to fight wars, to change destinies, and to even gain immortality. Whether the different lights, beams, craft, and symbols in Rendlesham Forest belong to time travelers or extraterrestrial biological entities from inside this universe, or non-human entities from parallel universes or other dimensions, why is the truth suppressed? Why can't governments tell their citizens that humans are not alone in this universe? What facts about other intelligences interacting with Earth do government insiders know and consider so dangerous that they hide those facts for decades under a policy of denial in the interests of national security, even keeping John Burroughs classified Bentwaters medical records from him when his heart was failing? If national security is built on lies and deceptions, it is no one's security. It is social imprisonment by illusion. It is. Okay. The 1980 high strangeness in Rendlesham Forest has never rested easily in the minds of those who were actually there. And perhaps like human time capsules, release capsules, John Burroughs, Jim Peniston, Adrian Bustinza, Colonel Halt, and others have embedded within them pieces of truth about an incomprehensible future, or pieces of lies that keep humans corralled by those illusions. Either way, whatever penetrated the Rendlesham Forest in December 1980 is still reverberating 35 years later in April 2015 in this room, with so much power that John Burroughs cannot forget the haunting telepathic lights and the question, what is the source? What if the key to the Rendlesham Forest mystery is a tangle of past, present, and future timelines, like a knot? And if the knot is untied by advanced technologies, what happens to past, present, and future? What else disappears or appears out of nowhere? Are we unconsciously in the ultimate paradox? We are they are us. Life on Earth is not guaranteed, but the mysterious telepathic lights and their makers are using us to help them survive by coming back in time to the 20th and the 21st centuries as the last time that genetic material was worth harvesting because of what might happen. If all humans became conscious of other life in the universe and that time manipulation is used in cosmic survival efforts, would our newly enlightened consciousness change the future for them, for us, present and future? Whatever revelations come next, I think it's clear we are in the century that will finally declare to the entire planet we are not alone, and other intelligences are and have interacted with this planet, past, present, and future. Thank you, dear Eureka Spring.